So when we got into Washington, D.C., we were able to experience new things, such as Washington, D.C., but also the metro that was in the first clip there. It was really interesting to ride the metro all over the place and see the various types of people that get on and off. There are some people with business uniforms on, other people whose pants were hanging out their rear ends like they didn't know how to tie a belt. And then the wildlife, quote unquote wild, were very friendly toward people. Dad says it was because they were used to people, and that makes sense. But it was such a surprise when Mom was eating a Rice Krispie bar and a bird came out and took the Rice Krispie bar from Mom's hand and started eating it in front of us. It was very, very unexpected, and we named the bird Crispy. Anyways, the architecture in DC was very reminiscent of Greek or Roman architecture, and in some of the clips you'll see later on in the video, you'll see there are Corinthian style columns, but the columns don't quite look like the Corinthian style columns. In fact, they have corn on top, and the column part of the columns were made to look like corn stalks, which was very interesting. Anyways, that dead tree, silver dead tree thing that you saw there, we called Mom's tree because Mom really likes painting dead trees, and she says it's because they're like stick figures. Anyways, in DC, I didn't realize how close all of the buildings were. Like, I didn't realize that the Capitol building was so close to everybody and that the White House was basically like the backyard or front yard, I guess, of the White House was all the city of DC. And I was envisioning something very different. Anyways, these are the Smithsonian Botanical Gardens, and we learned about pollination, which it was very interesting to have a random park in the middle of the place, but it wasn't unwelcome. You can see in the middle here, there is a bumblebee pollinating. Well, actually, it was a honeybee. Anyways, there's another bee, and here you see, well, actually, we didn't quite know what we saw here, other than a really cool castle, and it was about here that my phone died, so I wasn't able to take any more videos of that day. There's the, yeah. Anyways, so that's the Jefferson building we found out later. And today was the day we had a whole bunch of tours, such as a tour with Kathy McMorse's office of the Capitol building, which was very interesting. But the first thing on our agenda was the Library of Congress. Now, I was very, very impressed with the Library of Congress because of all of the artwork, but also because of all of the paintings on the ceiling. It was amazing to see all of the different paintings on top of the ceiling. Like today, you don't really see things on ceilings, and now I kind of want to put something on top of my ceiling, but I don't know what it would be. Anyways, so we got a tour of the Library of Congress, and we learned so many things about the different paintings and other things in the library. Unfortunately, the tour was only about 45 minutes or an hour long, and we couldn't see every single item in the Library of Congress. That would take months, I think the tour guide said. But anyways, the ceilings depict right here the rise of mankind and the varying places of mankind. Here is the Gutenberg Bible. That's one of the original Gutenberg Bibles. And the guy who did the Gutenberg Bible, printed it and everything, he had impeccable handwriting. At least that's what the tour guide was saying. I might have gotten what he was saying mixed up with something else, because handwriting and printing doesn't quite make 100% sense, but oh well. Anyways, You can see the columns in here are Corinthian style columns. Again, they were very beautiful and marble, of course. And one of the things we had to be careful of was to use the handrail while walking up the stairs. And the reason for that was because the steps were worn away with time. It was really cool to see all of that and feel it underneath your feet. Anyways, here is the actual library. We weren't able to go in farther than this, but there were statues all around of two important people in the time of and eras of the world. And some of those include William Shakespeare as well as Moses. He was the statue right in front of us. Now, the stained glass windows were all around the building, and they showed the different states and their plaques or shields on them. So that was interesting. And one of the things I really enjoyed about the Library of Congress, other than the paintings and the architecture and the statues you see here, were the varying quotes that were there. It was really neat to see all the quotes, and I wish I could quote one. Well, actually, I can. Words are also actions, and actions are a bunch of words. And doors must follow science, books must follow sciences and not science books. And it was really interesting to see all of these quotes from different people. One of the things that the tour guide said was that there were only 2 people whose names are etched into the Library of Congress, but all of the people here are people, well, not all of the people, but most of the painted people are women. And the reason why they are women is because they embody all the perfection, I think is what he was saying, of the different arts that the woman was portraying. Now, there's a statue behind us who's looking right at the Capitol. That was really neat to see, and it was cool to see the Capitol so close to the Library of Congress. Here are some more paintings. Once again, you see the women there, unnamed of course, but they're there and looking very beautiful, as they would because they were painted to look so. Anyways, the windows were also really neat too because they were kind of small and circular, but also they let a lot of light in. And one of the things about the Library of Congress was that it was lit by oil lamps once upon a time, and now it is not. And it's kind of fascinating to think all of those lamps were at one time lit with actual fire, and the whole building was lit with actual fire. Now, this is Thomas Jefferson's library, I believe it was. And it was so cool to see his personal library with all of his books. And the quote there said something along the lines of, "If there were no books in this world, it would be a very sad world indeed." Thomas Jefferson absolutely loved books, and I agree with him. If you look into a book, you're transported into a different world, and a lot of people don't really realize that, and I find it sad. But anyways, these things were painted on the walls, and it's a different face each time, and there were like several rows of them. It was really funny to see. These are the little statues called P2s, I think. Anyways, we're at the Supreme Court, and I didn't get a lot of footage in the Supreme Court because I was instructed, as was the rest of the people there, not to film while in the actual Supreme Court. It's been a tradition held for years and years and years and years, and no one has broken that tradition. So, anyways, it was really interesting to see all the different things here in the Supreme Court, like the marble and the pictures and the little scenes and windows. Anyways, this is John Marshall. He was the Chief Justice of the United States. And this is what the inside of it looked like, the Supreme Court. That's what the inside of it looked like, but on a smaller scale. Anyways, we were sitting in a room waiting for us to be able to get into the Supreme Court and hear the lecture, that's what they called it. And all around this place were Supreme Court justices and their head busts. Now, we're at the Capitol building, and the first thing I want to say is there were so many school field trips going on. The whole place was so crowded, and I was getting a little annoyed at all of the loudness that was going on, and I was wondering if some of the kids were even paying attention. They weren't. Anyways, we get into the Capitol building and realize, wait, we're not supposed to be in the Capitol building. We're supposed to meet Kathy McMorris's person at Kathy McMorris's office, which is not in the Capitol building. But anyways, right now we're underground, which was fascinating because you don't really think you're underground because the entrance was outside, if that makes sense. But you are underground, and the video of the skyline sort of looking up with the blue windows, that was ground level. Anyways, every state has 2 statues in the Capitol building, and our first statue is Mother Joseph, who was a nun. And at first I thought it was a person, a male, who pretended to be a nun, but no, it was an actual nun. Anyways, on top of the Capitol building there is this statue's sister, and this statue is to scale. It was very cool to see her hat up close, especially like the little loop, which, why is there a loop? No one really knows, but it was so astounding to see all the different statues, and it made me appreciate all of them even more. Anyways, this is the supposed cornerstone of the Capitol building laid down by George Washington. And one of the cool things about this place, the Capitol building, is it's been updated and remodeled so many different times. Oh, there's the ghost paw prints of the cat. But anyways, it's been updated and remodeled so many different times, and things were taken and improved upon, like the Corinthian columns. Those that I just zoomed in on, those were tobacco flowers and plants, which were a very lucrative crop back in those days. But anyways, the whole building was expanded upon, but there wasn't really any care to where exactly they did expand upon. Like for the inside, they mostly expanded for the aesthetic appeal. So that's why there are random outside garnishings on the inside and windows that lead to the hallways. And anyways, this is wrapping up the vlog, but this is our second statue, Mr. Whitman, who was killed by Indians after failing to survive the plague. It was interesting.